Okay, so in the last video we concentrated on creating group channel tracks, and as you can see I've sent all of these bass sounds here that make up the bass intro part and the bass line throughout, and I've sent them to the bass group. So I've now got one volume which I can control all of them with, and I can control the effects and the EQ as a group, or I can still edit them individually if I want. Now the next stage is going to be to focus on the drum kit a little bit. So all the way through editing I've told you to kind of keep all of the drums into one part, apart from maybe the cowbell and the congas. So what we're going to do today in this video is to actually what's called dissolve or explode the drum parts onto separate tracks, so that we can pan each of your drum sounds differently, maybe set the levels of them separately, or most importantly we can put different amounts of reverb or delay or EQ, whatever, to separate parts of the drum kit, rather than as it was before with all the drums. You know, if you edit the Hallian sound, the only thing that it'll let you edit is the actual overall reverb or overall decay or flange or limiter or whatever. So what I'm going to do then is first of all glue all the drum part together. It's quite important. So as I use the glue tool, I can drag a box over the whole track and then just click once. I could click individually, but that way is quicker. Okay, next thing will be to select the drum part, so click on it once so it becomes red. Then I'm ready to right click, and as I go down to the bottom of the menu, in the MIDI menu, and it's actually out of sight, which is a bit unlucky, but I go to MIDI, and 3 from the bottom on the MIDI menu there should be an option to dissolve the part. So if I select dissolve part, you'll see what happens. Brings up a little dialog box, and that dialog box says, do I want to do it to separate pitches? And when you think about it, each part of the drum kit is mapped to a different pitch on the MIDI keyboard. So the bass drum is lower down, snare drum a little bit higher, cymbals further up the keyboard, and so on. So they're mapped to pitches. So if I separate them out according to the pitch or the key that they're on, it's going to create a new track according to each individual key that was played in the part. So if I click on OK, it'll take a minute to process that, and it actually puts all of them down at the bottom. So what we'll need to do shortly is move them to the top, but just for the sake of speed at the moment, you see it's labelled them all the same. Now if I double click on one of these parts to open it in the MIDI editor, the drum editor, okay, I'll just resize this window so that you can see it. We see that this instrument then, if we try and find the one that's actually being played, is B0. Okay, so it all depends on which particular track. So there's a good chance that was maybe one of the cowbells or a triangle part, so I can now label that accordingly. Or if I double click on another one of these parts here, we can see that it was the tambourine. So that's the only one now on that track which is playing. So I can go and label that as tambourine. And this one, if I double click it, open it up, I can see that that was the snare. So double click there and choose snare. And this one was the hand claps, so I can call that one claps. And so on. So you get the point. So now it means that for the tambourine, if I want to solo just the tambourine on its own, I can do that. If I want to solo just the snare, I can do that. And that's an option that we didn't have before, but it also means that instead of having to use the T9 analog kit for all of my sounds, which maybe might have given me a really good bass drum, but maybe not such a good hi-hat or whatever, I can now go and, if I don't like the snare from this kit, I can go and change the snare for something else, for maybe the techno kit snare or the vintage kit. Okay, so this is going to require a little bit more auditioning of sounds, and you're going through and finding which ones you like, but you can now try to match individually every part of the original drum kit. So again, it's going to mean a lot of listening to the original. Okay, so there's 2 elements to that sound. There's the reverb on the original snare, and then there's the actual sound itself. So you need to very carefully listen and decide, well, what is important. When we have chosen a new sound, remember that you need to turn off any reverb that's applied to that sound originally, because we're going to add our own later.